Again, the breaking news: despite attacks on the special counsel, his team and the president's team are discussing topics that investigators might ask the president. Meantime, more reaction to the Andrew McCabe firing. A Republican member of the House Judiciary Committee says it was, quote, wholly justified. That's from a statement from Congressman Matt Gaetz of Florida. As we reported, the president spent the weekend tweeting not only about McCabe, but about special counsel Mueller and his team, once again raising the specter that he has set his sights on firing him. I spoke with Congressman Gaetz just before airtime. Congressman Gaetz, you believe that Robert Mueller should be fired. You don't think the president himself should do it. Can you explain that?
I can. I think that the president firing Mr. Mueller would create a series of conflicts and other downstream effects that would be bad for the country. I think this is the job of the Attorney General, because there's been no evidence of collusion produced by the special counsel, and because there's been a House finding of no collusion in the Intelligence Committee. I think the Attorney General would be right to renounce his recusal, to re-establish command of the Department of Justice, and then to give Bob Mueller a time period to produce the evidence that he may or may not have regarding collusion. And if he doesn't produce it, let's wrap this up and move on to tax cuts and other important things for the country.
But as you know, I mean, the investigation isn't over for Robert Mueller, so there's no reason why, again, we don't know if there was collusion or not, but there's no reason why at this point he would have charged something on collusion. He seems to be building a number of cases.
He certainly does. And, you know, Anderson, we're 14 months into the Trump presidency. So let's assume that those who are the president's biggest critics are right and that there was collusion. We shouldn't wait any longer to see the evidence. Let's find out what the evidence is as we stand here today. And if 14 months into this presidency there isn't evidence of collusion, I think it's important to move on. But of course, if the special counsel has evidence, I think every American should be eager to see it.
I just want to play something that your Republican colleague, Congressman Trey Gowdy, said yesterday about Mueller. I just want to play this.
Give him the time, the resources, the independence to do his job. And when you are innocent, if the allegation is collusion with the Russians and there is no evidence of that and you're innocent of that, act like it. Let it play out its course. If you've done nothing wrong, you should want the investigation to be as fulsome and thorough as possible.
I'm wondering what you make of his argument. I mean, is the president acting like he's innocent in all of this?
I think he is, particularly when he went and gave an impromptu interview to the New York Times on the record, recorded about his views of the investigation. That is not the behavior of guilty people. That's what an innocent person does when they're so frustrated by the fact that there seems to be a counter-narrative that you want to go and set the record straight. And so I have every expectation that the president will be found innocent in any sincere and unbiased tribunal. But here you've got a group of people who seem to have bias against the president, who have an unlimited amount of power to go after him. And that's where the frustration bubbles up among many conservatives, if not Mr. Gowdy.
The new lawyer who the president has added to his legal team said that the Russia investigation was cooked up by a group of FBI and DOJ officials intent on, in his words, trying to frame Donald Trump of a falsely created crime. Do you believe that's what happened here, that there's some sort of cabal at the top echelon of the FBI? Is that what you're alleging?
I think we need to look into that question, and the FBI and Department of Justice certainly can't investigate themselves, and so it's one of the reasons why I've joined Congressman Lee Zeldin and others in calling for an independent review of those activities. And Mr. DeGeneva is certainly a very capable attorney, served as U.S. Attorney in Washington, D.C., and I think that there's also evidence in the Lisa Page Peter Strzok text messages that would evidence Mr. DeGeneva's claim, particularly the assertion that there was an insurance policy being hatched in Andy's office. We assume that is Andy McCabe, and if those three were together manifesting their bias against the president, then certainly what Mr. DeGeneva has said is true.
This is similar to the argument you used to make about a secret society, which was referenced in one of those text messages as well. You now admit that that whole secret society thing seemed to be in jest. Once the more texts were released, it was evidence that it was related to some Vladimir Putin calendars that were released, yes?
Well, I think that it's always reasonable to try to get more context to these claims. It's highly aberrational that you've got two people engaged in an extramarital affair texting in real time about an investigation of the President of the United States and about an investigation of a presidential candidate like Hillary Clinton. So again, it was a reasonable question to wonder why people at the FBI were referencing a secret society. While there may have not been some formal incarnation of that, that you may have had the very informal cabal that Mr. DeGeneva referenced working against the president.
You do admit, though, with the fuller context, it now just was a lighthearted remark, yes?
Well, look, there still are messages we haven't seen. So I think that before drawing those conclusions, we should have a full redaction of the text messages. There are over 1.2 million records the Judiciary Committee has requested. We've received about 3,000 of those records. So I think there's a lot more investigating to do. And it may very well be that you had an informal cabal functioning in secret with a societal goal of hurting President Trump without any evidence.
That sounds like a massive conspiracy theory.
It may have been a massive conspiracy at play. That's why we want a special counsel to look at these things. Look, when you've got the FBI saying that it's wise to go and fire Mr. McCabe, who was one of the senior officials at the FBI, you have got sufficient smoke to believe that there is fire that exists. And that's why we're asking the tough questions. It's why we want to have an independent review of the activities of the FBI and Department of Justice in the FISA process and the Clinton Foundation and the Clinton email scandals. And I think that Mr. McCabe's firing validates many of the concerns that I've raised along with many of my colleagues.
You said, though, the FBI can't investigate itself. As you just said, it was an FBI review which called for McCabe to be fired.
It was. That was the Office of the Inspector General. The difference as it relates to the FISA matter, Anderson, is that there can be no charges brought. You see, the Inspector General cannot actually impanel a grand jury and bring charges. And so that's why we need a second special counsel potentially to be able to take the work of the Inspector General, the work of the Congress, and then to be able to present that evidence before a grand jury so that our justice system can work.
So just so I'm clear, you want to shut down the special counsel Robert Mueller, who's investigating the president, but create a new special counsel to investigate potential cabal or secret society at the highest echelons of the FBI.
Correct. And the reason that I have those views is that the Mueller probe has so many people included in it that won't be able to see beyond their own bias. I'm not suggesting that Joseph DeGeneva or any major contributor or supporter of the Trump campaign be appointed to go and look into the FBI or the Department of Justice. I'm seeking an independent review with people who have not manifested their political activity to the extremes that the people have who are involved with Bob Mueller.
All right. Congressman Gaetz, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Anderson.
We had to cut that interview down for time. We're going to be posting the entire interview online at ac360.com. Hope you